Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you join us for today's webinar. I'm Anka Novakovic, president of EcoCoach, which is a DC-based sustainability consulting firm, and I co-manage the SmarterDC Challenge together with Patty Rose, executive director of Green Space. If you're not familiar with the SmarterDC Challenge, it's a DC-wide sustainability competition for office-based organizations, property managers, and most recently hospitality venues to help up your sustainability game, so to speak. There's an online and peer-to-peer component to the challenge, and we're just entering into our second year and have about 150 participating organizations and buildings. So be sure to check out our website, SmarterDCChallenge.com, for more information. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I wanted to go through. Audio is available for this presentation through your computer's mic, and speakers are by telephone. Your call-in number as well as your access code is in the control panel box on the right-hand side of your screen. You will be muted, and all attendees are muted to minimize background noise. But if you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the questions box on the upper right-hand side of your screen. We're going to allow time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, be sure to contact us, and we're going to try to troubleshoot the issues. The webinar is being recorded, and we're going to be sending out a recording as well as the link to the presentations to all those who registered. And before we get started, I also wanted to ask you to take a minute to complete the poll that's in front of you. I want to get an idea of how many of you are participating in the SmarterDC Challenge. I know we have actually some folks joining us from overseas and from Canada, so we know you aren't part of it, but if you are in DC, we really hope you're participating, or that you'll reach out to us afterwards to get more sign up. So while you're taking that poll, I'm going to take that time to introduce our speakers. We have three fantastic speakers today who are going to be sharing with you some great information to support your water conservation, reduction, and tracking efforts. Tara O'Hare is the commercial building outreach lead for WaterSense, and she'll be providing you with tips on how to conserve water at work, some of which you may have thought of and others not. She's also going to share with you some best management practices, tools for getting started, resources, and a case study. Next, we have Michael Zatz, who is the Chief of Market Sectors Group for Energy Star's Commercial and Industrial Branch, and he will be sharing water tracking features available in Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Now, you may be familiar with Portfolio Manager in terms of energy benchmarking and tracking, but you may not have started looking into your water consumption, so this is a great opportunity. And finally, we have Brandon Chase, Director of Customer Success with Aquicore, who will address submetering of cooling towers to reduce the DC water sewer charge. And Brandon's also going to be sharing a case study. Again, please remember to post any questions you have in the questions box. So as we go through the presentation, if you think of questions for the presenters, you can put them in there, and then we're going to address them all after the three presenters have finished speaking. And thanks so much for completing the poll. It looks like we have a few challenge participants, which is great, actually about half of the folks. And so if you are in DC and you haven't signed up, be sure to check it out on SmarterDCChallenge.com. And that is all for me. Tara, take it away.
Thank you so much, Anka. Welcome, everyone. I'm with the WaterSense Program at EPA. Next slide, please. I'm going to cover quite a few different things today, so I may go through some of them pretty quickly, but I wanted you all to have the information as a reference. So today I just wanted to get started by talking a little bit about why it's important to save water. I know that since most of you signed up for this call, I'm assuming that you understand that water is important to pay attention to, but you may not be thinking about all of the different reasons why saving water is important. So the first is to really reduce your risk of uncertainty. Water and sewer rates have been increasing rapidly, faster than inflation for the past several years, and are expected to continue. And some of these variations in rates can be large, and they can make it very difficult to predict future costs. So when you're looking at some of your planning efforts for your facility, this is one area where if you can reduce your water use and kind of manage your costs, it allows you to plan a little bit more effectively. And then also if you're in an area where there are water shortages or drought, which we don't have a drought necessarily in DC, but there are some shortages in the summer, there are also some really good ways to prepare yourself for any time when there may be a shortage, so you know what to do when that happens. And as I mentioned, you can really save some operating costs, which can help you maximize your profit margin. Saving water saves energy because of the energy used to heat, treat, and pump water all over the country and in through your building as well. So you can really maximize your savings and your efficiencies by looking at both water and energy together because you will find greater savings in that process. And then also, as I mentioned, you can use some saving some water and saving on your utility costs to really offset some of the increased costs from an expansion in your building or a change in your occupancy or your facility usage. So it just can be a way to kind of offset some of those things. And then also if you are a hospitality facility, which I understand that there may be a few on there today, you can also use some of this information to compete in the green meeting marketplace. Many government and corporate parties are expecting the facilities to have a lot of practices in place before they actually will make their reservations. So that's another great way to do that as well. Next slide, please. So for those of you participating in the challenge, I went through, looked at the water criteria for each category just to kind of give you a sense of how many points are actually in this section of the challenge. So I broke them out so that you can see that in each area there are some significant points to be earned in the water use efficiency area. So you can gain a lot of those through planning and management, whether you're a property owner or an organization. And so we're going to talk about some resources that we have today that can help you with that, as well as some things that you can use to help you with the sanitary fixtures, some employee engagement and education, and also outdoor water use if you are a property manager. Next slide, please. So every commercial facility is different in terms of their water use profile, so I wanted to give you a quick overview of the different types of water uses within commercial facilities. So many of you are probably office buildings, which do have a significant portion of their water use in restrooms and also through cooling and heating and outdoors, depending on how much landscaping you have. But every facility is different, so it's always important to assess your own facility's water use and really look at how water is being used in your facility where you can manage that. Next slide, please. So the WaterSense program can help with a lot of these issues. We were launched in 2006 by the EPA as a voluntary program to help consumers and businesses find a simple way to find water-efficient products, homes, programs, and practices. So the WaterSense label is the one that you see here on the right side of your slide, and it indicates a product that has been independently certified for water efficiency and performance metrics. So each one has a specific performance metric included in the specification to make sure that everything works just as well as its standard counterparts. Next slide. So the WaterSense program has these labeled products and best practices and the people component or behavioral components that we will talk about, all of those things today, all come together to really help save water within a facility. Next slide. So the WaterSense label is currently found on 7 different product categories, and many can be used in a commercial or residential setting depending on your facility. So I encourage you, if you're looking for a product replacement or retrofit, to look for the WaterSense label in each one of these categories. We have more than 16,000 product models that have earned the label. And we also have been working with our sister program, Energy Star, to include water factors in several of the Energy Star specifications. So you may not see a WaterSense labeled dishwasher or clothes washer, for example, but you can look for the water factor that is included in those specifications and know that you're getting an efficient product. Next slide. So the WaterSense program has a bunch of free resources that are available to all commercial buildings to help them save water. So most of these, all of these are on our website. We're going to touch on a few of them today, but many are available to you to dig into if you want to actually save water in these areas. So we have more information by facility type and about the water use profile of those facilities. And then we also have water saving tips, best management practices, assessment tools, worksheets, checklists. We have quite a few recorded webinars and live webinars coming up as well, and some case studies. So I'm just going to give you a sample of these today, and you can go online and find the rest when you have time. Next slide. So the main focus of our program is our best management practices, and this guidebook is kind of the cornerstone of this part of the program because it goes through every single water using area within a commercial facility and talks about how water is used there and how it can be saved. So we're going to touch on a few of these categories today, but there's a great amount of information in these best practices that can help you if you want to look further into these areas. Next slide. So each one, we have 36 best practices in all, and each one has an overview of the technology, some information of how to operate and maintain the product or equipment as efficiently as possible, and then we also give some things to think about if you're going to do a retrofit or a replacement project, and some basic calculations for what types of potential savings that you could see from making these changes in your facility. In addition to those, we also have more than 15 case studies from all different kinds of facilities using the best practices. I'm going to give one example today, but there are a lot more available online if you want to see them. Next slide. So tools for getting started. If you haven't started looking at your water use in your facility, you could earn 150 to 250 points in the DC challenge just by looking at your completing an inventory or doing a water assessment in your facility. So the WaterSense program has some sample worksheets that can help you go through some of the parts of this process and really get a handle on where water is being used in your facility. We also have a bunch of, we have a water use tool that we call it, which is just an Excel-based calculator that we originally developed for hospitality facilities to walk them through water savings calculations, but it can be used for any other type of facility too. You just can plug the information into the parts that apply to your facility. And then we also have some assessment worksheets to go along with that calculator so that people can find more information about each step of the process. But really the name of the game of all of this is finding out where you're using water within your facility and where there might be opportunities to save. Next slide. So one of the big things that we don't always talk about but is a definite contributor is that leaks are a very big source of water waste, or can be a big source of water waste within a facility. And leaking or continuous running water provides no added value to anything that you're doing. So as Anka alluded to, facilities pay for water twice. They pay for the water that's supplied to the building, and then they pay a sewer charge for the water that's discharged from the building. So if you're wasting it, you're paying for it twice. So it's even more of a waste in general. And then also, if unlike energy products, plumbing products leak when they fail. So if you have something that's broken, it could be leaking and wasting a huge amount of water, and you may not even know it. So we encourage everyone to place some signage in the restrooms, for example, or kitchens, or areas of water use to encourage people to find leaks and tell them how to report them. So this is something that you can use to educate your tenants or your employees or anyone else really, so that if they see something, they can say something and you can actually fix it faster. Next slide. The water savings in restrooms can also be a very significant area of water use. It's up to 40% in most commercial facilities. If you have an older facility with fixtures that were built before 1994, they could use 3 to 5 times more water than newer efficient models. So that's one thing to think about if you have an older building, that might be a place where you could get some pretty significant savings quickly. And then also putting some of that signage and some of that in educating your employees on how to actually report leaks or how to actually use the fixtures correctly is also very important, because the behavioral aspects of water savings are significant. So for example, if you have a dual flush fixture installed in your toilets, for example, you really sometimes need to give some basic instructions on how to actually use it properly. So that people are doing it the way they should to save the water. And also, it's important to add maintenance contact information sometimes to also give people very easy ways for them to report problems. Next slide. So the WaterSense label can be found on many different products that can be used in both public and private restrooms. They have some of them have different technologies, so just take a look at what's going on in your facility and you can look for the WaterSense label and find savings. Next slide. So another area, if you have it, is commercial kitchens can be up to 15% of water use within a commercial facility. And this really applies to anyone that has a cafeteria, a restaurant, or another kitchen in a tenant or retail space. So it can be a pretty significant area of water and energy use, so it's a great place to look for savings. Some items within a kitchen actually operate continuously, and water can be flowing through some of these systems constantly, and could be wasted pretty easily. So one big one is to look at your food disposal system or your garbage disposal system, which could be using 2 to 15 gallons per minute. So you can really even avoid using that by scraping the food off of your dishes and composting it instead of rinsing it all off. So we encourage you to take a look at some things that may be running constantly, and also monitor some of your other systems to see if there are leaks within steam systems, or ways that you can reuse some of the water and recirculate some of the cooling water, for example, and save water. And then also, if you're looking to replace your equipment, we really encourage everyone to make sure that it's the right size for the application that you're doing, and to look for an Energy Star certified model, which can help you maximize water, energy, and cost savings. So some Energy Star products categories, as I mentioned, can be more water efficient. So many of the commercial kitchen equipment actually do save from 20 to 90% of water use over the conventional models. So that's something to really look for. Energy Star actually has a really great calculator that you can plug in information about your specific kitchen equipment and get information about how to save and what kinds of savings you could expect. Next slide. And then also, in every type of commercial building, mechanical systems can account for up to 30% of water use. So if you have any single-pass cooling systems, for example, that can be one place where you can save a lot of water just by recirculating the water throughout the system more than once before it's discharged. So some single-pass cooling systems can use 40 times more water than a cooling tower for the same cooling load or heat load. And so that's a place to really look for some savings, because it's pretty easy to do and it is very significant. So we also, I'm not going to get too far into this because I know Brendan is probably going to talk about it, but it's important to manage all of your HVAC systems so that you're using water and energy as efficiently as possible. So whether that's making sure your building envelope is very tight and is very efficient, or you can also use ways to maximize the water that's used in your cooling tower, basically by recirculating it as many times as possible. Next slide. And then finally, your outdoor water use could be 20 to 30% of your water for your building. So this is one area where there's a lot of water loss caused by poor system design or improper management or lack of maintenance. There's a lot of different issues that can happen with an irrigation system, and up to 50% of the water used outdoors can be wasted, whether that's watering during a rain event or whether you may just be watering the sidewalk. There's a lot of different things that can happen. So if you do have an irrigated landscape outside, we encourage you to make sure your irrigation professionals or contractors are as water efficient as possible with their practices. So WaterSense actually has a few programs that we've looked at and certified, so you can find irrigation professionals that have been certified by those programs to help you. Next slide. So those are some of the basic ways that you could save water. Each one has a ton more information online, but I wanted to give you a quick case study so you could see what kinds of impacts that I'm talking about. So one that we just recently got was a Sheraton hotel in Seattle. I know that it's not the same as DC, but it does have some of the same basic tenants. So this facility is pretty big. It has 1,200 guest rooms and about 74,000 square feet of meeting space, along with 3 restaurants and a pool and fitness center. So it's a pretty significant facility in terms of water and energy use. So one thing that they did is they started doing regular water audits and sub-metered their cooling towers and their irrigation controllers. And they also were able to switch from water-cooled systems to air-cooled systems for some of their condensate that is discharged to the sewer. It needs to be cooled down. So that was a project that they were able to get 1 million gallons of water saved per year and had a 9-month payback period. So it was a pretty easy sell. In their monitoring, which they did of their water meter and their water use, they found that there was a ruptured water heating coil, which was a significant amount of water that was being wasted. So they were able to fix that and also replace some of their restroom fixtures and retrofit their laundry system to save quite a bit of water and energy. So just in 1 year alone, they were able to reduce their water use by 5% and their energy use by 31%, which is pretty significant in terms of a building's savings. And then also that translated to about $36,000 in just the water and sewer cost savings. So the whole project saved quite a bit of energy as well. So it only maximizes your savings and success. Next slide. So upcoming in the next few months, we're doing a whole series of webinars about each different area that I touched on. And we'll be doing those with Mike Zatz's group in Energy Star. And so if you're interested in learning more, you can sign up for some of these webinars. Next slide. Or you can look at some of our free tools and resources online. And I gave you the link here, and then there are several other slides after this section so that if you want to go back, you can take a look at the specific things in each area. So to really get started, you can do a water assessment and do an inventory of your fixtures. You can start educating your employees and guests to look for leaks and report problems immediately so they can be fixed. And remember in this whole process that the savings from these types of projects aren't limited to major renovations or equipment retrofits. A lot of things can be saved just by changing your standard operating procedures or your usage patterns, and that can make a huge difference. Next slide. So that's all I have for you today. As I mentioned, there's a few other slides after this if you want more information, and I'm going to pass things over to Mike to talk about the Portfolio Manager.
Thanks very much. Hope that everybody can hear me. I'm going to try and keep things moving right along. So my name is Mike Zatz, and I am with the also with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and I manage the portion of the Energy Star program that works with commercial buildings. We always find webinars a little odd in that you have this disembodied voice talking to you. So we've taken to putting our picture on all of our webinar slides. So there, hopefully you can see me leaning up against a nice tree on a nice spring day here out in Northern Virginia. So I'm going to pretty quickly walk through some of the water tracking features in Portfolio Manager. If you go to the next slide. I'm hoping that most of you are familiar with Portfolio Manager, but just in case you're not, I'll give a very quick overview. Portfolio Manager is an Energy Star tool, and it really is the basis and the platform for almost our entire program in the Energy Star commercial buildings world. It's an energy benchmarking, assessment, and tracking tool that also allows for tracking of water use. And what it does is it helps businesses and organizations that use it to assess their whole building energy and water consumption. It allows them to measure and track over time changes in energy, water, greenhouse gas emissions and costs if they choose to put that information in. If you're purchasing green power, you can track that as well and figure out the impacts on your emissions. And it's very versatile in that you can put data in and then share it with others that you connect with. All of the data you put in is private in your own password-protected account, but you can choose to share it with other people. And ultimately, if your building performs very well in terms of energy efficiency, you can apply for Energy Star certification through Portfolio Manager. One other thing that we provide in Portfolio Manager on the energy side is our Energy Star 1 to 100 score. And that's essentially a score that tells you how your building is performing compared to other similar buildings in terms of energy performance. The higher the score, the better you're doing, and it's a percentile. So if you score a 50, it essentially means you're better than 50% of similar buildings. If you score a 75 or higher, that qualifies you to earn the Energy Star. And so I have a link there, energystar.gov/benchmark. You can access more information on the tool and the tool itself there. It is free. It's all online. There's nothing to download, so you can access it from really anywhere in the world. Put all your data in, use it, share it with others, do whatever you would like. Next slide. So Portfolio Manager has been around for quite a while. We launched it in 2000, and in 2013 we completed a major and complete overhaul of it. And really during that time, it's become the industry standard for benchmarking in commercial buildings. And you can see that as of the end of 2015, we had over 450,000 buildings in the tool, representing over 40 billion square feet of space. That's about 40% of the U.S. commercial market. And the graph on the right just shows that growth curve, really with a major upturn starting in around 2008, 2009. Next slide. So since we're focused on water, I just wanted to spend a few minutes telling you a little bit about how water is tracked in Portfolio Manager. And then I'll just show you some screenshots that very quickly walk through how you would actually go about doing that. So water is tracked in Portfolio Manager really by water source, just like on the energy side of the tool, which is its primary function, of course, because we're in the Energy Star program. On the energy side, we allow you to track and input all of the different types of energy that you use, electricity, natural gas, propane, fuel oil, whatever fuels you're using. On the water side, we allow you to track water by its source as well. And there are 4 sources of water in Portfolio Manager. There's municipally supplied potable water, municipally supplied reclaimed water, alternative water generated on site. I always find that name a little bit odd since you don't really generate water. But really what that is it's reclaimed water from rainwater, storm water that's harvested on site, things of that nature. Essentially things that don't come from a municipal supplier. And then there are other water sources, and that would be things like on-site wells or water you're pulling right out of lakes or streams nearby. So these are the different types of water that you can track. The definitions are a little long, and they're all right there. If you go to the next slide, you'll see then that once you put in the types of water that you have, and I'll show this to you in some screenshots in a moment, we have a number of different water meter types that you can choose. And essentially, there's a lot on here, but essentially all this is it's the same 4 types of water or water sources, the municipally supplied potable, reclaimed, alternative water on site, and other water sources. And for each one of those, we allow you to have a meter that accounts for indoor use of that type of water, outdoor use of that type of water, or mixed use. In most cases, people don't have indoor and outdoor metered separately, so they'll just use the mixed use. But we do allow this level of granularity with 12 different meter type choices. Next slide. And then once you put your data into Portfolio Manager, of course, the main goal is to get some metrics out of this that you can then see how you're performing at a given point in time, and then more importantly, track your changes over time as you hopefully are implementing water savings projects. And this is just to show you a few of the types of meters or metrics that we have for water. 3 of them sum up the other water meters, some of the other water meters that I mentioned. So you can see a total for all water use. That's essentially the first one, which is water use from all water sources. It sums up all of those 12 types of meters. And you can see a separate total just for indoor water use, which sums the 4 indoor water meters. A separate total for outdoor water use, if you have any of those metered separately, will just sum up the 4 outdoor water metrics. And then there's just a total for the other water sources. So again, a little bit of variety depending on how you're tracking things. You can see a variety of different metrics, and these are not sort of a pick one. You'll see all the metrics that apply based on what you put into the tool. Next slide. So now I'm just going to take a few minutes, run through a few screenshots for you so you can see how this looks in Portfolio Manager and how it works. This is going to be very quick. It's just going to show you a couple of screens, and I'll mention, click here, and then this takes you to the next place. It is not very complicated to do this, and we do run trainings on how to do this. We have lots of free online trainings that you can access whenever you want. We also do webinars that are free, just like this one, every month on not just how to use Portfolio Manager, but lots of other things related to energy savings, water savings. As Tara mentioned, we're doing a whole series this year with WaterSense. And we have some printed quick reference guides, too, to help you actually use Portfolio Manager. But essentially, when you come into Portfolio Manager, and hopefully most of you have done this, you'll come to once you set up your account, an initial portfolio level view. That's what you're seeing right here. This is where you can see in the box on the right side a summary of all of your different properties in your account, some charts and graphs on the left side, and this is essentially what we call the portfolio level view. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see is once you click on any one of the properties that were in the portfolio view in that table on the right-hand side, you'll go to the property level view. And what you'll see here is we use a tabular structure. You can still see those portfolio level tabs at the top where it says My Portfolio and Sharing and Planning, Reporting and Recognition. And then for every property, you'll see the additional set of tabs where it says Summary, Details, Meters, Goals, and Design. So that's the property level view, and the rest of the screens I'm going to show you you access from the property level. The next slide will show you a view from essentially on the top left here, back from the portfolio level view. In order to add a property into Portfolio Manager, add your building in there, you just click that little button at the top that says Add a Property, and it'll take you through a wizard. We designed this to be somewhat like TurboTax, where you don't have to know how to do this. The tool is going to ask you some questions. You're going to check off a few boxes, and based on what you answer to those questions, it's going to ask you the next set of questions. So once you click Add a Property, you're going to start that wizard. That's the larger blow up on the right-hand side. You're going to tell us the primary function of the property. That would be something like office or multifamily or hotel or whatever. You'll tell us if it's a part of a building, meaning just a few floors, if it's a single building, or if it's a multiple building campus. And then you'll tell us whether it's an existing building or a design project, because you can use Portfolio Manager to do estimates based on estimated data for a design project, although most of our use is for existing buildings. And then after you do that, you hit Get Started, the Get Started button, and it takes you through some more questions based on your answers. Next slide. So then coming back to water, let's say you've now gone through and you've entered your property into the tool, so you've entered the property name and square footage and some of the other data. Then what we do is you go and you set up your energy and your water meters, and that's how you put your metrics, your data in, so you can see the metrics. So we actually just launched something brand new, you can see, which is these additional tabs that separate energy and water. And what you would do for water is you would click on the water tab, and then you would click the little link that says Add a Meter. And then if you go to the next slide, once you click on that, it will give you this chart, and you'll check off all the different types of water that you use. Those are the 4 types I mentioned. Once you click each one of those, it'll expand. So if you click municipally supplied potable water, it would expand into indoor, outdoor, and mixed indoor and outdoor. You click those, and it'll ask you how many meters you have. And you do that for each type of water that you use on your site. Next slide. Once you make those selections, you go and set up the meters by simply entering names for them and the start date of those meters. And then you click the Create Meters button. And once you do that, you'll be taken to a page where you'll then enter your actual meter data. You enter just the monthly bills or quarterly bills, whatever the time periods are, as you receive them. You put a start date and an end date and the amount of water used right off your bills. And the tool then saves that and will ultimately calculate annual metrics for you. If you go to the next page, next slide, you'll actually see what this looks like after you've entered your data. So once you've entered the data in, you'll see a screen like this, which shows the data that you entered, including the costs and the last date of update. And then you're essentially done at that point. You have all your data in there, and you can now see results. So if you go to the next page, you'll see an example of some of those results. This is a standard report that we have. You can just click a single button that'll give you an indoor water intensity report. This is one of the more common ones for water usage. And it shows you a variety of different metrics. I know it's a little bit small on here, but it shows you the water per square foot that you use in this property, including changes over time. And at the bottom, you'll see links to the raw data that you can certainly get and export into Excel if you want to manipulate it further. And that's pretty much it. That's how you get your data into Portfolio Manager for water use. It's a little bit of what you can see. Obviously, it's a very quick overview of how to do it, but like I say, it really is not very complicated. We provide lots of extra training. If you go to the next slide, was just a last little plug for something that I think is very complementary to what you're doing in the DC Challenge. This is something we call our Battle of the Buildings. We're going into our 7th year in 2016 running this. This is a fun competition where we have buildings just compete to see who can reduce energy use the most over a given period of time. We're trying something new this year. This has always been an annual competition. This year we're going to do a 90-day boot camp, and that's going to run in the fall from September 1st till the end of November. So please be on the lookout for that. Registration will be open starting in May, and we hope that many of you will compete so that we can see how the buildings in the DC Challenge are shaping up against buildings in other parts of the country. So if you go to the next slide, it's just a few links and my contact information for you. I hope that was helpful, and we'll be looking forward to answering any questions you have at the end. And I'll hand it right over to Brandon.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike. Really interesting stuff. Well, hey, everyone. Good afternoon to you, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited to discuss how you can take advantage of existing technology to optimize water use and show you a case study on one of our customers who has seen some really impressive results. So by way of introduction, I am Brandon Chase, and I'm the Director of Customer Success at Aquicore. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Aquicore, we offer a comprehensive energy analytics and automation solution for commercial real estate with a vision for better building economics and sustainable portfolios. So without further ado, let's jump in. Awesome. So it's pretty obvious that water covers much of the Earth's surface, but the challenge lies in the fact that 97% of the water on Earth is salty. Another 2% is locked up in ice and snow, which leaves us with just 1% potable or usable water. And due to many factors, including our growing population and the increasing demand for food and energy, our overall demand for that 1% of water is expected to exceed supply by 50% in 2030. Next slide, please. So of this 1% of potable water, buildings consume 14%, which is about 15 trillion gallons per year, or about 800 billion showers. And data from the U.S. Green Building Council shows that water efficiency is expected to reduce water use by 15% or more, which equates to about 2 trillion gallons. Next slide, please. Not only is there a concern about water supply, but we're also faced with rising costs. So while the costs are still relatively low compared to electricity, they're growing at a much faster rate. And in the graph below, you'll see that electricity has increased at basically the same rate as the consumer price index or inflation, but water costs have grown twice as fast. But don't start worrying just yet. There's a lot that we can do. Next slide, please. There are new regulations and certifications that have been introduced in the past 2 years that support water efficiency, and this includes California's Progressive Building Code Title 26, which requires water submetering for all buildings over 50,000 square feet, in addition to ASHRAE requirements and new lead points in LEED V4 for water metering. Next slide, please. And although electricity gains a lot of attention on a utility budget for those real estate owners and operators, water is becoming a higher priority for operators and managers as water and sewer charges are rising. As you can see here, while working with Aquicore, one of our customers realized that they were billed incorrectly for over 9 years since the utility was adding an additional charge for irrigation instead of subtracting it from their total consumption. So after reporting this to the utility company, our client was reimbursed for $81,000. And obviously water metering and submetering really helps to identify some of these anomalies in what can be a somewhat complex configuration of water systems in your building. In addition, if your building has a cooling tower, DC Water offers a 10% discount on your sewer charges because of the water that is evaporated out of the cooling tower. And you can also request a water meter to get an even larger discount on your sewer charges. Ideally, technologies like Aquicore would be included in these type of programs. So that's part of what we're working on with our team. Next slide, please. So one way that industry leaders are addressing some of the regulations and opportunities in this space is through real-time water monitoring. And the solution for those who aren't aware is basically involves connecting to your utility meters or submeters to a cloud-based platform which captures data hourly or even minute by minute. And on the screen you're seeing real-time water usage over a 1-week period and a layer that shows the operating hours of the building in blue, which helps user identify opportunities to eliminate waste. So you'll see a few blue boxes that show usage during non-working hours. And this is different than a utility bill, obviously, which would only provide quarterly or monthly insights into your consumption. In some lucky circumstances, you can get down to a day or an hour view. But obviously, the more information you have, the more actionable it can be. And I'll show you kind of the ability to set up notifications and different things once you have 15-minute or even down to 1-minute data. Next slide, please. So the case study I'd like to walk through here is with the tower companies, and they're a real estate owner and operator based in the DC area. The tower company is a leader in sustainability, and their building, 1909 K Street, is currently ranked #2 in the SmarterDC challenge for top DC sustainable properties. So they're very active in the area and involved through their buildings with LEED and Energy Star and a lot of other areas. And they've been using Aquicore's real-time water monitoring solution since early in 2015, and I'm excited to share some of their results with you. These are just some high-level figures on their total consumption and cost per year. So, as we've heard, the costs of water aren't as high as electricity, but if you think about the opportunity to reduce a $45,000 a year cost, there's some really big implications there, especially when we talk about catching leaks and impact on tenant spaces and things like that. Next slide, please. So here you can see 2 screenshots from the Aquicore software showing the before and after of the real-time cooling tower consumption over a 1-week period. And using the Aquicore analytics and notifications, the tower company's team was able to set up real-time alerts, which helped them catch a huge water anomaly last Easter. And as Tara mentioned, by catching this, they save both on the consumption charge and the sewer charge. And in addition, the customer also identified a faulty float assembly and relocated a sensor, which led them to a much more optimized consumption pattern, as you can see. So basically, all of the usage points throughout the week were, in the past, pretty sporadic, but now they're very fine-tuned, and the difference is, the impact is a 45% reduction in water use, and that's over a year-over-year comparison. Next slide, please. So here you can see the results of the project to date, and you can see that catching an anomaly one time might not have a huge impact, but over the entire year of 2015, they were able to save $14,000, which when you compare that to the cost of the Aquicore metering and the software subscription, gives them a payback period of just around 4 months, which is really pretty impressive. So thinking about kind of what comes next, next slide, please. There's a lot of opportunities to expand this beyond single buildings and into portfolios. So another example of a successful water monitoring campaign is a portfolio-wide initiative by CBRE. And they implemented remote water monitoring controls and client education. And they've saved over 1 billion gallons of water in 18 months and reduced annual water costs by 38%, so a similar percent savings relative to what we've seen with our customers. and they've saved over $5 million for their clients. So some really exciting results, and just the opportunity starts to get even bigger when you think about large portfolios and of multi-property customers. So that's it for my portion. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned something new today. And now I'll pass it back to Anka.
Thanks so much, Brandon and Tara and Mike, for these 3 great presentations. We had a couple questions for the audience. I think the first one is from Ethan, is about the SmarterDC challenge. His question was, where are the points for? And basically, Ethan, the SmarterDC challenge, its online component includes a list of activities for that are specific, either whether you have a property that you own, or if you have an organization where you lease your space. And there are different activities over 7 different themes, water being one of them, that you can complete. So for water, you can establish a water conservation policy. You can eliminate use of single-serve water bottles as 2 examples. And then for properties, you can actually track your water use with Energy Star Portfolio Manager. That will earn you points. Using WaterSense applies across both organizations and properties. Installing aerators to sinks. Those types of activities will each earn you points. And as you add points, you move up. There's a leaderboard, and so you can become one of the leaders in the challenge, either for your organization or your property. And I tried answering that in the chat box, but I don't think it took. So the next question comes from Kathleen, and her question is, I think for you, Brandon, what's the square footage and occupancy of the tower building info cited?
Yeah, that's a good question. This building that we're referring to is about a 250,000 square foot building, and the occupancy is around 80 to 90%. So a pretty large building relative to the average size, and pretty well occupied.
Great, thank you. And the next question comes from Jay. Is EPA looking toward new technologies such as waterless urinals, foam flush toilets, or composting toilets that save water, certified with the WaterSense label? It's for you, Tara.
So the WaterSense program is always looking at new technologies and new product categories for labeling. Right now, we aren't looking necessarily at those 3 categories that you listed, because they don't use water. So right now we're focused on labeling products that actually use water so that people can figure out which ones are saving the most. A product that doesn't use water is inherently water efficient, so we haven't gotten that far yet. So I would encourage you to, obviously, if your system makes sense to use those types of products, go for it. We are currently looking at things that are a little bit more mainstream. So I think that's
great. Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat box. We will be on the line for a couple more minutes if anyone else has any other questions. In the meantime, I wanted to thank our presenters once again, and we appreciate your time. And we will be, as I mentioned before, sending the presentations and then the recording to those folks who have registered for the webinar. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.